So students, now we are going to learn about the Kepler's law. The next one topic is the Kepler's law. Now, before we go through the three laws, now the Kepler is one of the scientists. The full name of the scientist is Sir Johannes Kepler. Sir Johannes Kepler. So, before the Galileo, the planetary movements and the planetary observation has been made by the Johannes Kepler. After that, he has given the number of observations, experiments. He has observed the planetary movements, and based on that, he has prepared a theory. He has prepared three types of laws, and those laws are known as the Kepler's three laws. Okay, so these three laws are based on the planetary motion. So one by one we will understand those laws. Okay, now so the first law of Kepler we will first state, then after that we will understand with the help of the diagram. Now the first law of Kepler states that every planet revolving around the sun revolves around the sun in an elliptical path. So this is the first law of Kepler. I will repeat one more time. Every planet revolves around the sun in an elliptical path with the most important thing I forgot to write, with sun is at the foci. The sun is at the foci. So this is the complete law, this is the complete statement of the Kepler's first law. I will repeat one more time. Every planet revolves around the sun, or the planets are revolving around the sun in an elliptical path with sun is at one of the foci. Now we will understand with the help of the diagram. Sorry. Suppose this is the ellipse. Suppose this is the ellipse around which the planets are revolving, or in which the planets are revolving. Now suppose this is the sun. Now this is planet 1, this is planet 2, 3, 4. So these planets are revolving around the sun in an elliptical path or in an elliptical orbit. This is the elliptical orbit with sun is one of the foci. Sun will be termed as foci. Okay. So this is the first law. Of Kepler. There is no need to make any confusion about the Kepler first law. You can just keep in your mind with the help of the diagram. This is the ellipse around elliptical path in which all the planets are revolving around the sun, and sun will be at its foci. So that is the first law of Kepler. It is very simple and it is very easy to write in the exam. So this is known as the Kepler's first law. So students, we have learned about the Kepler's first law. Okay, I will repeat the statement one more time. Kepler's first law states that every planet revolves around the sun in an elliptical path with the sun at one of the foci. Okay, that is the first statement of the Kepler's first law, and we have understand with the help of diagram also. Now we are going to learn the second law of Kepler. Okay, now as far as first of all we will see the statement. What is the statement of the Kepler's second law? Then we will understand with the help of the diagram. Now Kepler's second law states that line joining the planet and sun, sweeps equal distance in equal interval of time. In equal interval of time. So this is the statement, students, of the Kepler's second law. So that statement is, whenever one more important thing I would like to tell you here, that whenever you are going to write this statement of any law, then it should be in double inverted comma. Double inverted comma. Then at the end of the last word there should be completion of your double inverted comma. So in that way you have to write the any law. So the Kepler's second law states that line joining the planet and sun sweeps equal distance in equal interval of time. This is the second law of Kepler. Now we will understand with the help of the diagram. Now, as per we have learned in the first law, that suppose this is the ellipse. This is the ellipse, and in this elliptical path all the planets are revolving in an elliptical path with the sun is one of the foci. Suppose this is the sun, and it is one of the foci, and all the planets revolving around the elliptical path. Okay, so this is the first law of Kepler we have understood. Now with the help of same diagram we will understand the second law of Kepler. Now as you can see here, there is sun at the foci, and there are the 4 planets, as you can see, which are revolving around the sun in an elliptical path. Now what the Kepler's second law states, the line joining the planet and the sun. What he has said, the line joining the planet and sun. So according to the first case which is given in the law, we will move as per that statement. Now line joining the planet and sun. So we have to join the line planet and sun. So this is the line joining. Okay, planet and sun. There is line we have joined. Line joining the planet and sun sweeps equal distance in equal interval of time. Suppose, now we will understand with the help of this diagram. Suppose this is the planet A. This is planet A. This is the initial position. This is the initial position of the planet A. And suppose this planet A has moved from this position from A to B. From A to B. Okay. Now at the same time, suppose this is the planet C, and in the same time it has moved from C to D. It has moved from C to D. Now the law says that now the line joining the planet and the sun sweeps equal distance. Means suppose this is the distance. This is the distance. I have shredded it. So this is the distance, and this is also the distance. This is also distance. The line joining the planet and the sun sweeps equal distance in equal interval of time. Means students, suppose planet A moves from this to this point. It in the same time point C will be covering the same area. It will be sweeping the same area, and that is nothing but our second law of Kepler, or Kepler's second law. Means the time required to planet A to move at the point B, exact in the same time the planet C will be moving from this position to its final position. Means it will be sweeping the equal area in equal interval of time. Okay, so that is our Kepler's second law of, or you can say the Kepler's second law. Now we will understand the Kepler's third law. Okay. Now we will understand the Kepler's third law. Now first of all, as per our rule, we will first of all understand the statement. Now the Kepler's third law states that the square of period of its revolution is directly proportional to cube of its distance. Cube of its distance. Now students, we have learned about Kepler's first law, second law and third law. Now before we move towards the Kepler's third law, we will just shortly revise these first two laws. The first law states that all the planets are revolving around the sun in an elliptical path with the sun at one of the foci. This is the first law of Kepler. We have understood with the help of diagram also. Now the second law states that the line joining the planet and the sun sweeps equal area in equal interval of time, or you can say the equal distance also. So this is the second law of Kepler, or Kepler's second law. We have understand with the help of diagram also. Okay, how the line was joining from the sun to the planet and how does it sweeps the area with respect to the time. Okay, so now we will learn about the Kepler's third law. So Kepler's third law, first of all we will see the statement as per rule. Now the Kepler's third law states that the square, what does it say? The square of period of its revolution is directly proportional to the cube of its distance from the sun. What does it say? The square of period of revolution is directly proportional to the cube of its distance. Which distance? Which distance? The distance from the planet to the sun. The distance from the planet to the sun. If you are describing that distance, then it is okay, or you can just write up to this, then it is also okay. If you understand which distance, okay, I will explain that with the help of diagram, but before that you just understand the statement. The square of period of its revolution is directly proportional to the cube of its distance. For your sake of your understanding, I will write the complete sentence. It's a distance from planet to sun. From planet to sun. So this is the complete law of, or the complete form of the Kepler's third law. Now if we have to write that mathematically, then we can write according to the, there are two cases they are given in the law. So first case is the square of period of its revolution, means the square of period, means there should be the square of period. So the period of revolution we are describing with the help of letter T, capital T. So there will be, it's a square, okay, is directly proportional to the cube of its distance. Which distance? The distance of sun from the planet. So it will be r cube. It will be r cube. So according to the cases given in the law, we have just fulfilled in this form. Now this is the square of its period of revolution, that is t square will be directly proportional to the r cube. R cube is nothing but the radius. Usually we are using to denote the radius. So it will be the cube of the radius, means it will be distance from the sun to the planet. So t square is directly proportional to the r cube. So what if we have to remove the proportionality sign? So simply you can write t square upon r cube is equal to k. K means the constant of proportionality. So in this way we can describe the Kepler's third law. So in this way we can describe the Kepler's third law. But I think few of you might have got this very easily. But those students still have not got this Kepler's third law, I am going to explain them one more time. So first of all, when there will be the question in the exam that about the Kepler's third law, first of all you have to state the statement. It will be the square of period of its revolution is directly proportional to the cube of its distance from the sun and the planet. So this is the statement you have to write in the double inverted comma. Then the t square is directly proportional to the r cube. The t square indicates for the that the square of period of revolution is directly proportional to the cube of its distance, means the distance of planet and the sun. So if we want to remove the proportionality sign, then the t square upon r cube is equal to k. K is the proportionality constant. So this was all about the Kepler's third law. So this is how we have learned about Kepler's all theory, its introduction, first law, second law and third law. So students, till now we have discussed about Kepler's three law. We have discussed Kepler's first law, second law and the third law. Now after that we will be proceeding the next part of this gravitation chapter. Now, but before that, what we have learned in the Kepler's first law, second law and third law, it is necessary to learn about that. We will just revise one more time. Okay. Now first of all, what says Kepler's first law? Kepler's first law, what says? Now Kepler's first law states that every planet revolves around the sun in an elliptical path with the sun is one of the foci. With the sun is one of the foci. So this is what Kepler's first law says. Now we will discuss about second law. Second law of Kepler states that suppose this is the elliptical path and these are the planets which are revolving around the sun. Sun is one of the foci and these are the planets revolving around the sun, and the line joining these two planets, suppose point A is moving from A to B and it requires suppose 24 hours. Okay, if point A requires to move at the point B 24 hours, in the same time the planet C will be moving to the planet D, means it sweeps the same distance in equal interval of time, and this is what the Kepler's second law says. Now what this third law says? Kepler's third law says that the square of its period of revolution is directly proportional to the cube of its distance. What third law says? Third law says that t square is directly proportional to the r cube, means the square of period of its revolution is directly proportional to the cube of its distance. If you want to remove the proportionality sign, so it will be t square upon r cube is equal to k. T square upon r cube is equal to k. So this is, in short, we have just revised the Kepler's three laws. Now after that, the most important derivation we have to cover here. The most important derivation we have to cover here is Newton's universal law. Newton's universal law of gravitation. Newton's universal law of gravitation. Now, before we move towards the law, before we learn all the concept, we will learn about the basic. Now, what the Newton has says, in the Newton's era, we have seen that every object has been attracted by the earth towards its center. So that's what we have learned in the Newton's era. But before that, beyond that concept, there is one more concept, that in the universe, in the entire universe, let it be means beyond your planet, beyond your earth, beyond your solar system, we will be thinking about the universe, means we will be thinking about the universe. So in the universe, the two things will be attracting to each other. There is a force with which two things will be attracting to each other. Means students, suppose A is the one thing and B is the other thing. So these are the two things in the universe. So A and B are the two things in the universe which will be attracting to each other. And suppose there is the force of attraction between them. There will be the force of attraction between them, and this force, what the Newton's universal law of gravitation says, so this force is directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the cube of inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So this is what the Newton's universal law of gravitation states. Now I have told you in sentence in the statement. Now we will understand with the help of the derivation. So we will understand with the proper diagram. Suppose this is the two objects. These are the two objects which are attracting to each other. Suppose this is m1 and this is m2, and the distance between them is r. So the distance between them is r. So for the derivation we have considered two masses. m1 is the mass and the m2 is the another mass, and the distance between them is r. So this is the consideration we have assumed for the Newton's universal law of gravitation. Now I will repeat the statement of Newton's universal law of gravitation one more time, so you will get it very easily. So what the Newton's universal law of gravitation states: in the universe, the two things will be attracting to each other with a force which is directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So this is the statement of Newton's universal law of gravitation. Now I will derive that equation with the help of derivation. So just make concentration here. So this is the mass m1, this is the mass m2, and there is the distance between them is r. So according to the Newton's universal law of gravitation, the gravitational force will be directly proportional to the product of their masses. Means, as I have considered, m1 is the first mass, m2 is the second mass. So that this force is directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. Okay, square of the distance between them. So those students who have still not understood, for them I will explain one more time. For the derivation of Newton's universal law of gravitation, first of all we have think about the considerations. So what is the statement? So the statement is, in the universe any two masses attract each other with a force which is product of their masses, which is directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So this is the statement of the Newton's universal law of gravitation, and that statement we have to derive here with the help of derivation. So that statement I have written with the help of formulae or with the help of that cases, two cases. Now what are those two cases? So the Newton's universal law of gravitation states that force of attraction between two masses is directly proportional to the product of their masses. So I have considered m1 is the first mass, m2 is the first mass. So according to the law, there will be the product of masses, means m1 into m2. So in between m1 and m2 there is a dot, means there is a product between them according to the law. So this force is directly proportional to the product of their masses m1 and m2 and inversely proportional to the r square, means square of the distance between them. So this is the Newton's universal law of gravitation. Now if you want to derive this equation again, so if you want to remove the proportionality sign, then how we can remove? So this can be removed by adding the gravitational constant by g into m1 m2 upon r square, m1 m2 upon r square. So I have removed the proportionality sign and I have just added the constant of g. So this g is nothing but gravitational constant, and whose value of this g is 6.67 into 10 to the power of minus 11 Newton meter square per kg square. So this is the value of this g. This is the value of this g, that is constant. Okay. Now few of you having the confusion that in the book, if you see in the book, then there will be the kg raised to minus 2. Okay, kg raised to minus 2. Why? But I have written here kg square. Why this case is there? Why this different has occurred? So this is because of, if I just remove this sign means upon sign, then there will be the minus 2, kg raised to minus 2. And if I add this sign, then there will be only 2, mean kg raised to 2 will be there. And this is nothing but the Newton's universal law of gravitation. In short, I will explain one more time. First of all, I have just written the point Newton's universal law of gravitation. So according to that, first of all, any law will be there. So we are writing in the double inverted comma. Okay. So after that, we are just writing in the double inverted comma. First of all, I will state the statement one more time. The force of attraction between any two objects in the universe is directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So these are the two masses we have considered for the derivation of this law. m1 is the first mass, m2 is the second mass. So according to the law of Newton, so there will be the product of their masses, means m1 into m2. Okay, this force of attraction between them will be product of their masses directly proportional to the m1 into m2 upon inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So this is the distance between them. So there will be the square, and inversely proportional means it will be inverse. The term will be in the denominator. Okay. If there is a directly proportional, so that term will be in the numerator, and if there is inversely proportional, so that term will be in the denominator. So this is the difference. And the next part you can see here. If I want to remove the proportionality sign, so I will remove this proportionality sign and I will add the equal sign. So there will be, instead of proportionality sign, I will be adding the constant. That constant is nothing but capital G. Constant is nothing but capital G. And that G having the value of G is equal to 6.67 into 10 to the power of minus 11 Newton meter square per kg square. So this is the standard value of G. So if any in the problem you will be asking the value of mass, any mass m1, m2, or if they will be asking about the distance between two masses, or they may be asking about the force of attraction between any two objects. So this is the standard value you have to use while solving the problems. So this is how we have derived the Newton's universal law of gravitation.